Hello friends, welcome to this module on writing a chat client, client for an RMI based server. Fine. In the last module, we had developed a RMI based chat server. Fine. So, in this module, we will be looking at the chat client. Fine. In this module, we will be looking, we will be developing the chat client side for the server which we have already written. Fine. In the last module, we developed the interfaces called chat server, we developed an interface for chat client. These were used for defining the interaction between the client and the server, and then we had implementation class for the chat server side, okay. And then we had also written a main a class with the main method for the server side. So, that should be able to start a server. Fine. Now, for the client side, what we need to develop? We need to be developing the implementation for the chat client interface and some application which can use that interface. It would be the one which will be doing a lookup on the server and then use the client and server both to develop a application. Here we prefer to use a GUI, fine, and here for to keep the thing simple, we are going to use a AWT based Java application. So, we will have two things being developed here. One will be a GUI implementation for the chat client interface, and we will be developing the GUI as a frame, right. So, frame from java.awt. So, we will have one is a class called chat client GUI implementation, and another will be the chat frame class. Fine. So, let us proceed with the demo now. Fine. So, last time in the last module, we had developed these classes. Let us see what are the components we had developed. Let us have a quick glance at those. Okay. So, we initially developed the chat server interface with the and we defined those 5 methods there. Okay. Then we had also developed in the first method there, the login method, it was using a chat client which was again a remote type. So, in the chat client, yeah, we have these methods, we identified those 4 methods, fine, which we understand are nothing but invocation from server to the client, okay. And then we also identified, we also created the implementation for the chat server, a component which is an implementation of chat server, and then ultimately we also created a small application which can make that chat server available, okay. Fine. So, now let us proceed and start with the implementation of chat client. Fine. This interface, this needs to be implemented. Okay. So, let me just copy all of these. Okay. So, let us copy this and okay, let us open up another tab where we can do this. Okay. Fine, we will start with this and okay. Now, what we are doing is we are doing a GUI implementation. Fine. Now, in the GUI implementation, yeah, the methods to be implemented. Okay, we are thinking of implementing. It is a class. So, that is one thing. It is a class which extends from, yeah, what is needed here. Okay. The class should extend from unicast remote object, and it implements our remote interface, which is nothing but the chat client interface. Okay. So, yeah, now thinking about the GUI implementation of these methods. First method is fine. First method is every chat client will need to manage its name. So, yeah, we will have an instance variable for managing the name. Okay. So, we will have instance variable to manage our name here. So, we have the private variable, type is string, and that is a name for the client. Okay. Fine. So, get name implementation can be quite simple. We will think about constructor also after that. So, we have this as a public method Okay. Now, here it need not be having a throws for remote exception, and because this implementation is not using any kind of a remote invocation. Okay. So, we have this as return this dot name. Okay. So, that is one. Now, thinking about those methods like joined and left, now think of the GUI. In the GUI, we will be having one list on the client interface which would be displaying. So, it is the list which we are talking about here is the GUI list, the AWT list. So, we will have a AWT list which will be used for managing all the clients all the other clients who are currently connected to the server, and therefore, to manage that list fine we will be using a AWT list here. So, we will have a import java.awt.list. Okay. Same way for the message which has to be shown, okay, the last method is show message. Now, for message to be shown we will have some text area which is going to be used here. So, we will have import for java.awt.text area. Okay. Fine. Now, thinking about the constructor here, or okay. So, what all it needs? Yeah, the variables it needs, the state which is to be managed is one is the name, it will also need a list, fine, this is nothing but the client list, okay, and it also needs a text area which is nothing but the chat area, fine, where the chat will be displayed. Okay. So, coming to the constructor, let us think of constructor. So, if someone wants to create this chat client implementation object, okay, he needs to have those GUI components already existing, okay, and he needs to use those in the constructor. So, we have the chat client, well, let us call this as chat client GUI IMPL. Okay, let me change the spelling on top also. And it is a GUI, there could be other kinds of implementation. Let us put the name as chat client GUI implementation. So, the constructor for chat client GUI implementation, it would take 3 parameters, a name, another would be the list which is our AWT list, okay, and a text area. Okay. Fine. We remember that the constructor for all those classes which are extending from unicast remote object, they should have a throws for. So, we have a throws for remote exception. Okay, fine. And then yeah, the first thing we do is we will do okay, this class chat client GUI implementation, fine, it simply is going to initialize these variables, that is it, there is nothing else. This dot name is equal to n, this dot client list is equal to L, we have this dot chat area is equal to TA text area. Okay, fine, that is it. And then let us think of, now we can think about implementation which is needed for joined left. Yeah, what are those joined and left? They are very simple implementations. Okay, fine. If someone says joined, we simply need to add in that list. So, we have this dot client list dot add the name. Okay. And same way, if someone says someone has left, fine, we will need to remove him from that list. Okay. So, if someone leaves, fine, we are simply saying okay, this dot client list dot remove, and that name is to be removed from the client list. Okay. And then think about the show message. Okay, it is a GUI, and therefore, the show message would be, if someone says show message, yeah, we will simply have this dot chat area, in the chat area we will need to append, right. So, yeah, now what is the kind of string we would like to append here in the text area. So, fine. So, text area dot append, okay. In the text area, what is the thing we are appending? So, we will have from, fine, the message is from someone, okay. So, we will display message from, let us see, think of a text which says, okay, message from, okay, and we can have a colon space plus what is the from, that name, plus we can have a space, or we can have a space, colon, a space, and then we can append the message also, okay. And then we will have a new line, fine. So, the next append should be at a new line. So, we have for the new line we can use \r\n to take care of Windows platform also, fine. So, we have the append. So, this is the kind of string which gets appended whenever there is a message to be shown. So, if some other client is sending a message on the current client, yeah, he is going to be displaying this. So, this is a very simple implementation for our GUI, fine, chat client GUI part, okay. This is what he should be doing. If someone says add in the list, remove, we remove from the, so join, does addition in the list, left we have a removal from the list, and if it says show, we have a append in our text area, chat area here, okay, fine. So, we can save this and try to compile this. Yeah, we got all the imports here in place. Let us check this, compile and check. We will need to put it in the client side, okay. The package is client, and here we have name will be chat client GUI impl.java, okay. So, let us try compiling this. So, we have java c -d /bin, okay, dad, we have RMI, we have got client, and in that we have the chat client GUI implementation.java to be compiled here. Oops, one second, yeah, let us compile this. Okay, fine, a few errors here. Implements chat client, okay. Oh, we forgot the import for the unicast remote object. Yeah, we need that import. We need import for java.rmi.server.unicast remote object. So, let us compile this again. Okay, okay, we have, oh, those methods need to be public. Yeah, these are methods from the interface, fine. Okay, let us compile now. Fine. So, the compilation for this component is also done. Fine. Now, the important part, fine. Okay. Now, what we have is, we are going to have a frame, the Java AWT frame, which is going to be created. So, let us have our client implementation application for the a GUI application now being created. So, fine, let us start with this. So, this is going to be, okay, let us copy the initial headers part, maybe we will need some of the things from here. Yeah, this will be needed. There are many things, fine, let us copy up to this. We will correct all the things, okay. fine, we do not need the unicast remote object here. Okay. What are all the things we are going to be using here? We need remote. Okay. We actually do not need the remote, specifically remote, but okay, remote exception is definitely there. We have the list, the text area being used as GUI components. We will be having the buttons, we will have the frame and all those things. So, they are GUI components, okay, but we also need the server component here, and we have the Java not Java org dot epg pathshala dot dad dot rmi dot server dot chat server. Fine, this is one. We are going to do a lookup. We will have a naming dot lookup. So, we will need the naming java dot rmi dot naming. Okay, that is another thing we are going to be using from RMI. Okay, fine. Now, the GUI components which we are going to be using here, okay, it is going to be a frame which we are going to extend from java.awt.frame. We will be having some buttons, java.awt.button. We might be using the panels. Okay, and we might be will also be using those. We will be having event handling here. So, java.awt.event dot we have the action, we will have the action listener, we even have we will even have a window listener, and we will have the action event, the window events. Okay. When we are going to be writing implementation of those listeners, right. Okay, let us see if we need more, we will put them. Okay. So, now let us start writing the class. So, this class is our frame, GUI frame. So, let us call it as the chat frame, and this extends from the Java AWT frame. It is not an implementation of any such thing. Okay. So, simple frame. And yeah, what are all the things this is going to be using? So, now we are building a GUI, we will have GUI components, but two important things, both those, this is going to do a lookup with the server, fine, it has to interact with the server, and also it is going to be using the implementation of the chat GUI client, right. So, we have the chat server and chat client both being used here. So, we have private variables here, okay, of type which are the chat. We have the chat server, okay, that is our server, and we have a private variable for the chat client, that is our client, okay, chat server, chat client, and next we also keep a variable for now coming to the GUI components, right. So, okay. We can locally also, instead of just having the name, the chat client's name being managed only in the chat client implementation object, we might also keep it locally here within this object. So, we have a string for holding the client's name. So, that is a name here. Okay. And now coming, we can have a very simple kind of a GUI, right. So, in that simple GUI, we might be using, we have a arrangement of we will have one frame, okay. We will have one in the frame, we will have one text area where the chat will be shown, that can be the major part. On the right of that, we can keep one list where all the other chat clients will be shown. We will have one small text area where he can use for the purpose of entering whatever he wants to send to the others, and we will have on the right of that, we will keep one small panel in which we will manage two buttons, one button for sending whatever he wants to send from the chat area, okay, and then we will have one more button for a logout kind of a thing. So, he can do a logout, okay, using that. So, yeah, so we will have the things to be used. So, we will have the variables of type text area. Let us call it that is a chat area, okay, equals new text area. Okay. This text area will be now rows and columns, right. So, we can have 20 rows and maybe 70 columns wide. Okay. So, that is something which we are using here. We have a private variable again. So, on the right of this we will have a list which is our client list, okay, and this can be managed as a list. Now, the client list here, let us allow a multi selection. So, the client might select multiple clients in his list and try to send to all of those selected ones. So, we will have a list which is which allows multiple selection. So, when we create a list, yes, as a in the constructor we might use as parameter, we can specify the number of rows. So, to match the row the text area on the right hand side we will have 20 again, okay, and we will have will keep this true for multi selection, right. It allows multi selection because of this. Okay. Another one, okay, after this we will have a text area which is our entry area where he enters his text which is to be sent. Okay. This is created as equal to new text area. Okay. Here height can be maybe 5 rows and width to match the one on top, the text area on top, we keep it as 70 characters wide. Okay. And then we can have a simple we will have one we will have those two buttons, right. So, we have a button called the send button. So, we have a button with the label of send, okay, and we will also manage another button with the label of logout, okay, logout button equals new button, and we have the logout, okay. Fine. So, these are the things we will need to manage for which we will need to manage the state, okay. And okay, now before we proceed to writing the constructor and all other things, let us first think about the main method, fine, what we are going to do from the main method. So, let me first put the main method here. So, we have the public static void main, okay, and this let us keep a throws for the remote exception. Okay. Now, what we do in the main here is we actually would like to create the object of this this object of our chat frame needs the chat server also, right. So, we will do a lookup for before we create the object of the chat frame. We will do a lookup and give it to the while creating the in the constructor for chat frame we can give the chat server object, and we will also the name will be decided when someone starts the application. So, we will keep that as a command line argument. So, we can have those two plus a third parameter which can be a command line argument can be where is the server host, right. So, those three can be the command line arguments. Okay. So, we will have those three command line arguments. So, first argument that can be the maybe what do we keep? There are three parameters, right. First one was the name of the client here. Okay. So, let us have okay, or we can keep client name last. I think first will be what is the name by which on okay, let us keep the client name. So, we have string client name equals args of 0. Okay. So, that is our client name. We will have another string which is nothing but the host. Okay. So, host equals args of 1. Okay. So, host where we have the chat server running. okay, to which we the client needs to connect, and we will have another argument, another parameter, which will be what is the name or by which the we have the server object being registered. When we start the server, right, we have to register in the registry. So, by what name it has registered itself. So, that name we call it as a chat room. So, let us call it as chat room here equals args of 2. Okay. So, those are the 3 command line arguments we will be taking when we start the client. Okay. Now, coming to the fine. So, what do we do in the main now? First thing, do a lookup, right. So, we will have naming dot lookup to give us the object of chat server. So, we have chat server, okay, server equals, okay, the naming dot lookup method return type is remote. We will have to cast it into chat server. Okay. We have naming dot lookup. Now, when he does a lookup, what does he use? The string, the URL for lookup is of the form RMI : / and then whatever is the host. So, we will add whatever is the host specified. So, we keep that flexibility here plus the host plus another / plus, fine. We are assuming the port number the port number is going to be 1099. So, we do not have to specify, that is a default, right, and plus we will give whatever is the name by which he is registered. So, that is here available as chat room. Okay. So, naming dot lookup, fine. So, we do a lookup of the server. Okay. So, got the server, and now once you got the server being looked up, fine, we can use this and create the object of our chat frame. So, chat frame can then be given the object. So, we can have chat frame equals new, create the instance chat frame, and when we create the instance, we will be passing the object of server and the client name. Okay. Fine. So, once this is done, fine, we will just make the frame dot set visible true. So, this is typical of any GUI application. The main is something like this, right. Okay. Now, in the constructor of our, so now let us proceed with writing the constructor here. Okay. Fine. So, this is the main which we have actually written first, and now we will be writing the constructor, and we will see what all things need to be done, fine, a GUI application. So, okay. Okay. So, here we have a public constructor for chat client GUI. Okay. This is chat frame basically, yeah, we called it as chat frame. Okay. The constructor takes as parameter a chat server object, okay, and a string for the client name. Okay. Now, this would actually be creating the object of the GUI implementation. So, we will keep a throws remote exception. Well, we need this. Okay. So, what do we do? In a frame, this is extending from frame, and therefore, we will have a super, we want to give some title. So, title can simply say this is a chat client dash, and we can show the name of the client here. So, client name, yeah, that can be used here, okay, in when we call the. So, this is to set up the title for our frame. Okay. Next, let us initialize our variables. So, initializing those variables, we have this dot server equals server, okay, initializing the client. Yeah, before before that, let us also initialize the name, client name, okay, and then let us create our instance of GUI implementation, fine. So, now we can have this dot client equals new chat client GUI implementation, and here we need to pass name. Okay. So, either use the client name, that is okay, or name, and then what are those things? Oh, we have the what was the sequence in which we had required in the constructor? I think first was the list. So, we have the client list and we have the chat area. Okay. So, those are going to be passed as parameter, and let us just verify the order in case for the constructor for chat client GUI. Okay. The chat client GUI implementation, right? Yeah, the constructor takes list as the second parameter, fine, and third parameter is the text area. Okay. So that is fine. So, let us proceed now. Okay. Fine. Okay. So, fine, we got our client also initialized, name also. Okay. So, all our variables are initialized. Once we have this, fine, now we need to set up the GUI part. Okay. Before that, let us also will need to have this dot set the bounds for it. Okay. We will need to try out some things. Okay. Width and height. So, let us try something like 700 by 500. Okay. Fine. We may have to adjust slightly this bounds. Okay. Bounds will be okay, x y, right, it needs x y first. So, 0, let us keep it at 0 0, and then width height can be something like width is 700 and height is 500. Fine. We may have to adjust this later, fine, after looking at how it appears. Okay. And then we do this dot, let us set up all the GUI components. So, a method, we can have private method to set up our components, okay, and we can have another private variable where we will set up all our event handlers. So, set up events, fine. So, we are delegating this to the two private methods which we will be developing here. One method for setting up the GUI components and another method will be used for setting up all the event handlers. Okay. So, yeah, just for convenience, there is going to be something which is going to be very commonly used here. Okay. So, we have okay, let us start with the private method for we will have a private method here for the setting up of components. So, let us have private void setup components. Okay. In setup components, yeah, it is about setting up all the GUI components, making those arrangements. So, we will have layout manager being used. Here we will be going with the flow layout, fine. You can experiment with other layout managers, you can have your other kinds of layouts, but the components to be used will be these, right. Let us add those imports for the layout managers now. Okay. So, we will have import for java.awt.flow layout. Okay, we need that layout manager to be used. Okay. So, fine. So, first thing, this dot set layout, setting up the layout manager, set layout, we can have the object of new flow layout. Okay. Fine. So, that is a flow layout being set as the default, and now see the flow layout will keep the preferred sizes for the components, and we have specified row width, fine, rows and columns. So, that should be a good layout manager here, fine. Okay. So, one thing is, yes, we have set up the layout manager layout for this, and now let us add those components. So, first we will start by adding the main, which is the chat area. So, we add the chat area. So, this dot add, we will have the chat area being added. Okay. Next is this dot add, we will have adding of the list, that is next to it. So, this is nothing but the client list. We will have this dot add, and after the client list we will have the entry area being added. Okay. And then we have those two buttons, and for those two buttons let us first put up create a panel, put those two buttons in the panel, and then we will add them. Fine. Panel by default has the layout as flow layout as the layout manager. So, we do not change that, right. So, let us add a panel, let us create a panel first, panel P equals equals new panel, fine. And in this panel we will add the send button, and P dot add will also send the logout button. Okay. And this panel can then be added, this dot add can be added to the frame P. Okay. So, the panel with those two buttons is then going to be added to the to our frame. Okay, fine. So, that is what we have for the setup components. Now, let us go for the another implementation, which is the implementation for setting up of the events. Fine. We want to set up the event handlers here. So, set up events. What all events we will need to handle? Okay. The events are the events for, we have the events for the two buttons, and if someone tries to close the window. So, window closing, right. So, let us start with the window closing. Now, when someone says window close or someone says log out, let us in both the case we will have the same kind of activity being done. So, that is nothing but logging out the current client. So, we can have a private method here, okay, which will do the logout of the logging out activity, fine. So, we have private void, we have the logout. Okay. So, we can have a logout as a method, if someone says logout on this. Okay. So, this is going to be called from the event handlers. Okay. There are two event handlers from where this is going to be called. One is when someone tries to close the window, so it is the window closing, and other is the action performed on the logout button. Okay. So, yeah. So, what do we know? What do we do here when someone says logout? Oh, it is the server which needs to be informed that I am logging out, right. So, we will need to invoke the method on the server, and that is throwing a remote exception. So, we can keep our try catch here. Okay. Okay, we will need to be catching the remote exception, catch remote exception. Okay, fine. So, because it is a logout activity, you can print the stack trace anyway, yeah. But anyway, whether he is able to log out or whether that okay. So, one thing, yeah, what do we do? Tell the server that we are logging out. Okay. So, we have this dot server dot logout, and we pass the client name here. Yeah, we have the name, the variable is name, sorry, we have name. Okay. Fine. It is this dot name. Yeah. Fine. We have that instance variable called name, recollect that. Fine. So, we log out, and in any case after the logout is done, fine, we have this dot dispose and this dot yeah, instead of this we can just simply say system dot exit 0. Okay. So, we exit when someone says log out, we are also terminating, but before we terminate we need to tell the server that we are logging out. Okay. So, that part should be taken care here, right. Okay. Now, going to the setting up of all the event handlers now, coming back to the event handlers. Yeah, set up events now. Yeah. So, first event handler, let us do it for the window event when someone says when someone is closing the window. So, we have this dot add window listener new window adapter. We can use the window adapter, fine, and override. Okay, we will have it as an anonymous inner class. Okay. And in this anonymous inner class we will have, okay, what should we do? yeah, new window adapter. Okay. In the new window adapter, we are only overriding method called window closing, where the parameter is a window event. Okay. And what we do from that method is simply call the logout, right. So, we will just say logout. Okay. Fine. So, that logout method is going to be invoked. So, this is one place where we invoke the logout method. Okay. And another one is the no, it is not on this, but it is basically on the logout button, this dot logout button dot add. So, it is an action listener now. Okay. New, we have the action listener again as an anonymous inner class. Okay. Yeah. In this we are overriding action perform method, and parameter is the action event. Okay. So, what do we do in this? Again same thing, just simply do a logout. Okay. So, both of these are related to logout. So, that has been taken care of. Now, comes the most important part. Okay. Okay. What now needs to be done is we need to handle the send button. So, yeah. So, we have this dot send button dot add action listener, parameter is the action event. Okay. Fine. We can't have a throws, right, because these are overriding methods. Anyway, so now we will have a loop, right. We will have to know what are all, we will have to get the list from the we have the list being managed, right. So, in this list we have allowed a multiple selection, it is a multi selection list. So, we will need to get all those items which all those names which have been selected from the list, and then tell each of them that yes, we need to be that you can send this message. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, what do we do here? We on the send button. So, when first thing grab get all the selected items. So, we have a string array, we have a method called get selected items, right, which return. So, these are nothing but the client names. These are the selected client names basically, when I am saying client names, okay, equals, and we have the client list dot get selected items. Okay, fine. So, get all the client names, fine. Now, if this list is not having, if the size of this array is 0, if client, so if there is nothing which is selected, okay, so client names dot length is 0, or okay. Anyway, we are having a for loop, we are anyway not going to have anything. So, we need not have a check on length 0, we can go for a for loop, right. So, now we have a for loop, okay. To each of them we are saying send message, right. So, we have a for loop which says for each string client name in those client names, okay, all those selected names, we have to send a message to them, right. So, I am saying okay, how do we send the message? So, send the message, we are telling the server about send this. Okay. So, we have server dot show server dot send message. Okay. Okay. The from is going to be, oh, we have got yeah, from is going to be the name of the current client, and 2 is nothing but the client name. And what is the message? Oh, message is going to be the client area. Okay. We have the client area dot get text, not client area, sorry, it is an entry area. He has entered the text to be sent in the entry area. So, entry area dot get text. So, that is a string which is that needs to be sent to the server dot send message this. Oh, but that is a remote method invocation, we will need try catch for this. So, we will have a try catch for the remote exception. It is a remote method invocation here. Re dot print stack trace fine. So, even if any one of them fails, it will continue trying to send the message for the next client. So, fine, if anything throws an exception, that will still continue and try to do it for all of them. And once this is done, we also need to be clearing the entry area, right. So, we can do this, we can say this dot entry area, so sorry, we can just say entry area dot set text. We will have the set text to blank. So, that is for clearing the entry area, fine, whatever he has entered earlier, it is sent and then we clear it. But one more thing, whenever we are sending, I think we will also do one more thing here. It is a good idea here that yes, once we have sent the message, we will have a append in our area, that message sent to so and so. So, we will have the chat area also being updated, chat area dot append. So, in the chat area we are going to append sent message. So, it is just for the information that the message is sent, right, sent message to plus what is the client name. So, we have been able to send the message to the client name, and plus of course, we will have the new line \r\n being appended. So, we will have that append. So, that should be saying to who all we have been able to send, and in case if we are unable to send, we have a print stack trace anyway, but we will still on the chat area we can display failed, right. So, chat area dot append send message failed for client for, and we can say for colon and plus we have the client name. And of course, that \r\n. So, fine. So, this is how we are going to handle the send button. Fine. So, event handling for these things have been done, and of course, a few more things. I think in the setup components, there is another important thing to be done. The chat area is something we do not want to be editable, right. That is read only, right. So, it is going to be appended, everything is going to be done from the system. The user should not be allowed to do whatever he likes here. So, he will say this dot or this dot chat area dot set read only. How do we set read only? We can disable it. So, that would be or we want it to be selectable. So, fine. Let us just verify what is the method used for, and let us in API the method for setting it read only. I think we have a method for setting read only. And this is the method for the text area. Okay. Let us look at those setter methods. Do we have something called set read only? Set editable. I think its method is set editable. So, we will say set editable false. Okay. So, we do not want the chat area to be editable by the client directly. Okay. Fine. So, I think this is what we have for the chat frame for the time being. Let us see, we will need some corrections, we will make those. So, we have this is our client. So, this is the chat frame.java file. Okay, let us check this now. Okay, so first to compile this, chatframe.java. Okay, there are a few lots of errors here. There seems to be some. Okay, let us see. Yeah, action event AE. Oh, there is some missing bracket. The line number is 60. Okay, line number 60. I think there is some major problem with line 60. Let us correct that. I think something is there, something missing here. This is ended properly. Add action list. Okay, this is there's a semicolon for this. This dot logout button dot add action listener. Let us just see what that error says. This dot send button dot add action listener, a bracket is expected. I think there is some action. Okay. Yeah. This dot send button dot add action listener. Oh, we need actually what we need is we straight away wrote the implementation part. This needs to be going inside. Let us see this. What we need is we will say new action listener. Yeah, and then we have this method. This is nothing but implementation of a method. Okay, so it's a public void action performed, and yeah, the parameter there is action event. Now there's some, yeah, these all needs to be corrected, and this is all part of the method, right? Okay. Okay, fine. Let us see this. That should be set right properly. Yeah. Fine. That is a method. Let us indent it further, since it is a method for our inner class. Just an indentation. Oops. Yeah. And of course, what is missing here probably is one more braces which will be needed. Okay, so this is here and a semicolon, and this is indented further. Yeah. Okay, so that should have been corrected now. So let's recompile and see. Okay, most of those errors were related to that. Yeah. Okay, so we have one error here. Oh, we need the import for the window adapter. Yeah, that's something we need. We'll have an import java.awt.event.window adapter. Okay, let's compile now, and we have yeah, we did a lookup there, and we need a throws for not bound exception. Okay, so we need a main. Now for our main we can even keep a throws exception, right. So instead of this, let's make it as a throws exception. So that should be through now. Okay. Fine. So that compiles. So we are through with developing those components now. So we can now just have a look at we'll first start the server and then start the chat clients and see how those work out. Okay, so we have the server. How do we start the server? Java -cp /bin. We have the EPG Pathshala DAD RMI server chat server main, and to this we have to pass an argument about the name by which it is going to be registering in the right. So let's call it as Java chat, fine. That's a chat room name. The J and C is capital. So remember this. Okay, so we'll run it in the background. Okay, so I've started it in the background. Okay, so our server is running in the background. Let's start a client now. Okay, we have again org EPG Pathshala DAD, then RMI dot client, and in the client we have the chat frame. Now for chat frame, 3 parameters, right. The first parameter is the name by which we would like to start. So let's say let's put some name like James. Okay, and then we will use next thing is the host. Host here is, let's call it as localhost. Okay, in our case it's just the localhost, we are trying locally here. Okay, and the name of the chat room is Java chat, right. J and C is capital, and let's also start here from the same window. So we'll do it as a background job. Okay, yeah, what happens? We have our okay, only slightly difficulty with the layout. So what we can do here is quickly we can just adjust like this, and it got adjusted. So width probably needs to be increased slightly. So the changes you can make, you can experiment and make those changes, fine, and height can be reduced further. Okay, so fine. Now this is the only one who is logged in. So there's no one to select, right, to whom he can send. So let's start one more client. Okay, so let's start another client. For this we'll have to change the name. Fine, can't have same name being repeated. So one is for James, another could be Josh. Okay, so we have another one for Josh. Okay, so let's see what happens when we start this. Oh, there's some small problem where the list is not getting updated. Yeah, one thing what we haven't done, right, we'll need to make that small correction, is we haven't updated the client list when he logs in. When someone logs in, we need to update the client list, and that's not being done. Anyway, so we can have a proper logout here. Okay, this one again, and we have a window closing being handled. Anyway, so let's just quickly do this in the server, in the client part. Yeah, in the client, what we need to do initially is, yeah, when someone says log, oh, we haven't done a login. where did we do the login? Oh, we haven't done the login. Oh, that's neat. That's something which is that's what was happening. We didn't do a login at all. Okay, where's the login to be done? Okay, so when you say set up components, fine, you have set up all the components. Setting up of events is done. Okay, now let's do a login. Okay, let's do a login, or even before setting up of all this, we can do a login. We can do a login right after creating this. Yeah. So after creating this client, we can do a login. So we'll get a string array. Okay, we are getting client list, client names equals. Okay, we have client names here. Yeah, and client names equals, where is it? Yeah. This dot client equal to, okay. Yeah. So client names equals, and this is what we get from the login method. So we'll have a login. Login is done by server dot login, and as a parameter we need to pass the client. Okay. So we got the client names, and now one thing we will need is these client names need to be set up on the list. So we'll have this dot client list. Okay. In that we need to add all of these. So maybe what we can do is we'll have a for loop for each of the string client name in those client names. Fine. We'll need to say client list dot add, and we have the client name being added. So that, okay. So yeah, what we had missed out was the login part. Fine. This is what was important. Fine. We have to log in. Fine. So that's where the client interacts with the server, gives it a stub, and then the communication from server can come to the client. Otherwise, nothing will happen. So that's one important thing. Okay. And this is for initialization of our list with the clients which are currently logged in. Okay. So yeah, with this, let's again recompile and try to run it again. So yeah, we need to terminate all of those. Yeah, we have that server which is still running. Use a Control C to terminate that, and we will start the server again. But yeah, let's recompile the client. Okay, so that's a chat frame we need to recompile. Okay, variable client name is, oh, it's already in use somewhere. Yeah, we have that, I think, as a parameter. Okay, so we use a different name in the for loop. Let's have CL name. Okay, fine. So just change of a variable name. Let's recompile. That's done. And now we can start the server and all those things again. So we start the server. Okay, we are restarting the server. Let's start the GUI. So GUI for James. Okay, let's adjust the windows. Okay, and let's start this again for Josh. Let's start this for Josh. Yeah, here we have for Josh, and yeah, you can see what's happening. Okay. So, here we can see what's happened is, yes, we got 2 of those GUI clients running, and yeah, this is a client for Josh, and in that in his window he is being shown the name, the list is this James is active here, right. So, we can try something like sending a message to James. Okay. Josh is now sending a message to James, hi James, Josh here. Okay. And let us see what happens when you say send button. So, we have used the send button, and there it is. Yeah, same way. Now, you could select the James could answer back and say, hi Josh, how are you? Okay. And he is sending that, and yeah, message sent, and yeah, we see in the window of Josh, yeah, we are seeing the message which comes from. So, we have communication between both of them. Let us see what happens when we add one more, right. Let us add one more GUI client, and let us see whether his name appears in those lists. So, now Josh is done. So, let us have Bill. Okay, so, we have Bill. Okay. So, we have Bill now, and you can see what is happening. The list for all of them, see the others list is also getting updated, the old lists, fine. For all 3 you can see the list, right. There is a list, fine. For the earlier ones the Bill is added, and for Bill the other 2 are added in their list. Okay. And maybe Bill wants to send a message to both of them. So, we can have multiple selection and Bill here. Okay. And we can click on send. Okay. Message has been successfully sent to both of them, and we can see it is updated in the other 2 GUIs, right. So, that way we can have multiple chat clients connecting to this chat server. So, we got a working chat server application, fine. So, this is entirely using RMI for communication. What we did was we identified what kind of methods are needed for communication between server and the client, and with the whole of RMI here. And so, that is for the, so you could extend this, you could update this further, this application, make those small, whatever small glitches related to the GUI, that corrections can be done, fine. And then, so it is a complete application. Okay. Fine. So, that is for this module, fine. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.